of Madness Heart Press and the lead designer of both Madness Heart Games and I guess my own little projects. I've worked on projects such as Liminal, Svamp. I was lead designer and writer of Mork. I've also written a handful of fiction, such as Jungles of Habael, War Dictates, which was nominated for a Spider-Punk Award. We had the Book of Zev series. This is Shade of Grey, book 3 of that series, and Abhorrent Siren, which is probably my best-selling book. So I wanted to come on because in a couple of days, on October 26th specifically, we're going to be launching the Kickstarter for my next book, Whispers of the Dead Saint. Now, it's mostly written already, so what we're doing is we're raising money to do a really nice illustrated edition, hardback. It's going to be awesome. The link is underneath the cover. I have so much trouble pointing at things on here. Link is underneath the cover there, so check it out. But what I thought I'd do is I'd come and read the penultimate first chapter for you. Some things are going to be changing because there's some surprises in the Kickstarter that I'm pretty excited about. But just an FYI, I had oral surgery this weekend, so if you see me kind of rubbing my jaw, that's why. And one of the stretch goals is to have a full audio book of this done, and if that happens, it won't be my mushmouth reading it. It will be the incredible John Wayne Comunale. So, yeah. This is the first chapter of Whispers of the Dead Saint. They keep blinking. I'm telling you they're alive, a man squealed. His voice was a grating whine that sounded like he was asking a question no matter what he was saying. No, they ain't. Here, I'll prove it. A second, gruffer voice, it was more cruel, answered. There was a whimper of fear, the sounds of someone being manhandled, and then a sickening thwack of someone cutting through bone and meat. The decapitated head rolled across the filthy bricks and into Dodds' eye line. He recognized the head. It was Lars Ubenhochtar, a piece of scum who had been arrested for filching bread to feed his starving family. The head gaped at him, terror still written across his features. The severed head's eyes blinked unevenly, the lips twitching and trembling, and then it was still. "We'll all be fucked straight," said the gruffer voice, which Dodds recognized as belonging to Earwig. "I told you! See? Grab another one. Let's see how long they survive it." That whiny voice would belong to Shumshank. He was a pissant squirrel of a man who would only step up in his cruelty when backed up by the larger guard. "Yeah, okay, but let's put some silver down on it," Earwig answered. "Well, Shumshank stammered. Of course he was trying to weasel out of the possibility of losing any coin, but Earwig was adamant about making the task of cutting off a man's head and seeing how long he survived more interesting. As they argued, the severed head began to rock, tendrils of black, corrupted blood snaking out of the stump, twitching and hardening. After a few seconds, the tendrils had become segmented legs, struggling to heave the head up and right itself. The head turned and looked at Dodds, its mouth opening. Too many eyes stared out at Dodds from inside the dead man's head before it hissed and scampered off into the shadows, unseen by the arguing guards. Eventually, the two guards agreed on a wager, and began scanning the rows of prison cells looking for who they thought would survive long enough, but not too long. Dodds lowered his eyes, not willing to draw any more attention to himself, as Earwig paused outside his cell. "Oh, I think this one's a hardy one for sure," Earwig called over his shoulder. Dodds heard the keys jangling. "Come on now, scum. You used to be a warrior, right? Used to be important. Let's see if you can make me a few silver, eh?" Dodds considered simply letting them have their sport. After all, what hope was there for a disgraced fool such as himself? But, as the big man came closer, ready to drag Dodds out of his cell and remove the head, in the name of science and greed, of course, Dodds exploded into action, One hand came up, slamming against Earwig's face. The jelly of his fat rippled as the knuckle cracked his cheek and he fell backwards, Dodds following after him. Within seconds, Dodds had managed to pull Earwig's dagger out of its sheath, and the two men wrestled. He tried to thrust the dagger into the man's stomach, but missed. The tussle wasn't silent either. Shumshank was soon standing over them, summoned by the noise, adding his own shouts to the cacophony and trying to pull Dodds off his partner. But Dodds wouldn't be dislodged. He shook Shumshank off, weathered a punch to the head from Earwig, then attempted to bring the knife down. Earwig caught his wrist, arresting the movement. The two men struggled, but Shumshank's steel-toed boot caught Dodds in the ribs, ending the fight as Dodds fell over, clutching at his side. Earwig rose. He was pale. He had almost been killed by one of these scum. But he was whole. "Oh, scum, you just messed up above and beyond your wildest fucking dreams. We was gonna cut your head off. But now, I'm gonna take my time." Earwig brushed himself off before kicking Dodds in the side of the head, dazing the man. He moved to Dodds' feet, grabbing his leg and pulling it up, dangling Dodds above the ground. "First, I'm gonna cut your ankles. Gonna end any dreams you might have about escaping. Then we'll have fun." He said the word fun as though it were a sumptuous steak, savoring every letter as he imagined all the games he would play upon Dodds' skin. Earwig grinned, gaining bravado as he brought the blade to the man's Achilles tendon, intent on stealing his ability to walk forever. "Earwig! Shumshank!" The voice was sudden and commanding. It sounded as though it was gargled through a throat full of phlegm. Earwig winced and looked like he was considering ignoring it and cutting off Dodds' feet anyway. "God damn it, Earwig! What did I say about executing prisoners without orders to do so?" The voice, one that Dodds did not recognize, did not sound happy, and it was getting louder as its owner approached through the dungeon halls. Earwig winced and dropped Dodds to the stone floor, sheathing his blade and giving Dodds and Shumshank a look of warning. Whatever happened, if either of them should make trouble for Earwig, it would be taken out of their hide once the voice's owner left. "Master Kroll," Earwig said, giving a strange mockery of a courtly bow, then gesturing wildly for Shumshank to join him. "We was just dealing with some churlish and seditious Do you know what either of those words mean, Earwig? Or are you just parroting others? Humfund, find him!" Lord Kroll snapped. Dodds lay on his side, watching the two guards trying to make nice with whoever noble it was that was visiting. Someone important, he gathered, from the way Earwig shook in his boots. "Well, I can help, sire. Who are you looking for?" Earwig asked, glancing nervously towards the pile of mutilated corpses they had stacked in the corner. If they had already executed whoever it was that Master Kroll was looking for, they would likely be joining that pile. "Shut up, Earwig," Kroll responded. You speak when spoken to." Everyone stood in silence. Somewhere in the dungeon, Dodds could hear the movement of someone, presumably Hamfund, checking each cell, and quieter than that, the tick of Lars' severed head crawling across stone. He stayed silent and still, letting the cool stone floor soothe his bruises, hoping that neither threat would find him. He knew if he caused problems, Earwig would take it out of him as soon as the Lord left. Perhaps with the distraction of Kroll, however, the guards would be too shaken up to continue their game. A small hope, but also the only hope he had. He closed his eyes. After what felt like an eternity, he heard footsteps approach in a soft voice. Pardon, sir? Would you be Herr Bringare?" it asked. Surprised to hear his name, Dodds opened an eye. Crouched above him was a squire in court finery. He had a round and gentle face. It was surprising that someone who looked so soft could also have survived long enough to grow old. How someone so gentle could survive long enough to have gray hair was a mystery to Dodds. He considered ignoring the squire after all. Nothing good came from someone asking your name. But really, was it possible to be in a worse situation? "Aye," he finally said, his voice a hoarse rasp. He had been deprived of clean water and food long enough that his own words felt like razor wire in his throat. Perhaps answering had been a shite idea. "Here, lord. Hamfun called. "I found your man."
"Him?" Earwig cried. "Sire, this one ain't no worth for you. He's but a troublemaker, pulled a knife on me just now." "And why, Earwig, did he do that?"
From around the corner of the cell stepped Lord Kroll. Kroll was a severe-looking man, withered and old, pale, with piggish eyes set deep into his skull. He wore velvet finery, which must have protected him from the cold, and a foppish, powdered wig that gave the impression of two beehives rising from the top of his skull.
"Ain't no cause for it, sire. He just—"
"No cause? Kroll smiled, his face alight with the cold joy that lords got from torturing those beneath him.
"Let's ask him, shall we?"
Kroll turned towards Dodds.
"Well, El Bringare, why would you try to puncture our dear prison keeper?"
Dodds once again considered his options.
"He was going to cut off my head. I wanted to keep it."
"Your head, that is."
"My life. Those are usually tied together, Herr Bringare," Kroll stated coolly. "Usually, but not always." Dodds paused. "Your lordship." "In these times more than ever," Kroll nodded, coming to some decision. "Help him up, Hamfund, and bring him to—" Kroll paused, his nose wrinkling as he saw the state Dodds was in. "Clean him up, and then bring him to the court." Without further word, Kroll turned and strode from the cell, leaving Hamfund to try to gather the injured and confused Dodds and escort him from the prison and from his death sentence. That's it. That's chapter 1. So, as I said, this is going live on Wednesday. There's a few different things that we're going to be doing. As far as, like, stretch goals go, I think it's going to be pretty cool. At the end of the day, it's a very fun book, and I want to do more of them. I'd like to do cyborg books, Death in Space, Vast Grim. Obviously, I want to write more cool novellas set in these really cool worlds. So, I hope you like this. I hope that you will support the Kickstarter, and thank you so much.